Welcome to Energy Stew. This is Peter Roth, your host. And I'd like to ask you, how much do you really know about yourself in this world, in this life? I mean, you certainly are a great witness to yourself, but how do you put the pieces together? I mean, we're all are many pieces, many aspects of self, and yet there are underlying principles and structures to our personality that make us different from each person, each other. And so how do we identify that and make the most of it? And to and we've been doing many radio shows about that, in particular, relating to the cards, the source cards that represent the structure of life to help us understand who we are. So to help us do that even better, I've asked our card expert, Alexander Dunlop, to come back and talk more about understanding the deeper ways that we function in life using the cards we're born to. And there are two main cards, and we'll talk about that because we have a whole hand of cards. But these two together actually say a lot. And that's what I've asked Alexander to talk about in the show is how these two cards that we're born to work together to help us know ourselves even better. Alexander Dunlop, welcome back to Energy Stew.
Peter, thanks for having me back. It's always a pleasure.
Sure, me too. And so we are. Can you explain that what these two cards are that we're born to?
Sure. Well, even before that, let's say that the source cards are a gift from whom we don't know exactly. This knowledge is as old as anything we know, traced all the way back to Sumerian mythology, right into the prehistory of civilization. This knowledge was already present. And then it was passed down in different forms and different streams and hidden in plain sight. We know it as a deck of cards. That's how it resurfaced in the popular culture in the Middle Ages in Europe. But it's ancient knowledge. And the pip patterns of the four suits, the way that they're arranged on the faces of the card, are actually like hieroglyphs or Chinese characters. These are visual language structures. And what they do is show us the structure of life, as you mentioned, and not just the structure of life in general, the structure of our life personally. So it can be read on the macrocosm of the whole world and then on the microcosm of our own personal life. Then within that, we have main cards of our life, main patterns, and then we have supporting cast of patterns. And it's all based on our birthday. It's based on numbers. The day that we first popped out into this energy field, we were stamped with these patterns somehow, and they become the primary patterns of our life. We have a birth card, which is our first pattern, and then a personality card, which may rule our life, may rule our behavior. It's our social identity. That's our secondary pattern. We have these two patterns, a primary and a secondary pattern, that are the fundamental ways that we experience life. And I know you've shared this before, Peter, but it really bears repeating that we're always playing out our cards, whether we realize it or not. We're always playing out these patterns, whether
And
we're
people
aware.
see our cards. Everybody knows our cards without even knowing cards. All they have to do is get the vibe. And
Exactly.
it's not the vibe about the card, it's the vibe about us that the cards are a window to.
That's right. So we're always aware of each other's energy patterns. And what I'm often saying to my clients is that knowing your cards to play is like when you finally get glasses on and you can see clearly and it's no longer foggy or fuzzy, but you actually get that lens correction and now you have clarity to see what was already there.
That's what I love about this is it helps us be clear about ourselves in ways that are language about us that make it easier to be ourselves.
Well, that's right. It does get easier, and that's what I've experienced personally. That's what I've seen now in over a decade of coaching work with clients. It's like, oh, that's why. And oh, of course. And oh, yeah, it makes sense now. And then we can actually live it rather than questioning it or doubting it, second guessing ourselves. We have that validation, that confirmation and clarity, and then we can do it. And it's easy once we know.
But
That's
also we can have the clarity to be compassionate for ourselves,
that's right. That's right.
because the cards also have shadows,
That's right.
and we've come here to live with our shadows and learn from them. And actually, their shadows represent a genius within us that is that we have to struggle for.
That we're learning to integrate, that we need to face our fears because it's only a struggle because we're afraid of it somehow.
Well, the world also meets our shadows. So it's
That's
not like,
right.
yeah, it's not like we can say, oh, I'm not going to act like that anymore because that's my shadow, or now I don't have to have a shadow, because then we'll bump into it. It comes to us.
Well,
So
we
that,
will until such time as we illuminate it. And then the magic is we won't bump into it in the world anymore,
well, it's not that I don't see, I would disagree with that. I think our shadows are always going to challenge us,
but
and,
in different ways.
but in ways that we're smarter about it. And we learn to dance with our shadows,
That's
and
true.
and even perhaps, you know, enhance our lives because of them, because they do represent our strengths. It's just that we're challenged to become our strengths.
Well, and what I've seen, Peter, and this is something that I'm often sharing too, is that when we are less aware, less clear, less consciousness, the encounter with our own shadow that's mirrored to us in the external world, which is a mirror of our internal experience, that's really can be really shocking and difficult, almost tragic, overwhelming. The more we illuminate the shadow, then actually what happens, and I've seen this, is good things pop out of the shadow. Wonderful, pleasant surprises that we never would have expected. It's still shadowy, still unknown, but it can turn into surprise.
Well, that would be nice. And we all have different shadows depending on our different cards. So it's hard to generalize about
Yeah.
the shadows. Plus, we also, are born into a particular culture and conditioning and ways that life shocks us, and we have to respond to it.
Well, that's right. And most importantly, we've chosen our cards to play. We must remember that as a soul, we've chosen this game to play. So we can't lament it and be like, oh, I have these difficult cards. You chose it. And maybe you did choose to climb Mount Everest. Maybe you chose a difficult path, but you wanted it.
Yeah, that's a whole different discussion, because that's our soul's choice before we're born,
Yeah.
to choose a life to
Mhm.
grow through.
Right.
So, but I love the cards. Um, they're so fascinating because they tell us so much so simply, really.
Mhm.
It's not
Well,
hard.
and the more I study them, the more I learn, actually. It's really phenomenal.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
not as simple as it looks, but
it's,
it is simple to understand the
yeah.
basic truths of them, and then it can get more and more involved.
Well, that's how profound it is. It's so simple and profound simultaneously. That's how we know that something is really profound when it's both simple and profound simultaneously.
I love that. Good. So you have a daily um, email that you send out, um, or I don't know if it's twice a day, because it depends on I don't remember. All I know, you get an evening one and maybe another one for the day, but I get them from you all the time, and you always have profound messages with each one,
Yeah.
and I've been very impressed, because your book also, Play Your Cards Right, has profound understanding about every card, and so You get to elaborate on that. And also, you have in one of the emails, you talk about unique cards, and then another one each day you talk about a pair of cards.
Well, okay, so every day, based on the numbers of the day, there are cards to play. And if you're born on that day, then those cards are your life path. But the rest of us who are passing through that day, we will experience that energy for just that day. We're in that energy field for that day. And then at midnight, the cards change. That's when the spell is broken, as in the fairy tale of Cinderella. There's a new energy suddenly at midnight. And if you pay attention, you'll notice that shift once you get finally attuned to these energies. So every day we have a game to play. We have cards in play. And that's how I, at my best, like to look at each day as a game that I get to engage in and play with and learn from.
Right.
And so that's what I do, Peter, is I send out the message of the day, and we've created something we call the daily game so that you can engage your life as a game and play along.
And one way that I see how these daily cards that are the energy of the day play out, because often we're not, aware of how they're playing in each day, because we're not as focused on and knowledgeable as you are. And for me,
Shucks.
it,
Do go on.
oh well, all in a day's work. So, but what I learned is, at Christmas we're always playing the Six of Hearts, and that's a judgment card. That's a karma card, and we're always looking.
The card of peace, also.
Yeah, that's why we strive for peace, but we strive for peace through the judgment of worrying about our karma. And so, because the six is pretty rigid geometrically, and so to me, it's why Christmas can be a difficult day for a lot of people, because it's, are you loved enough? Do you love enough? Are people carrying their weight? Is the family, nice enough? It's all these different things that are judgments that go into Christmas. And for me, it just makes so much sense that that's the card that's always at play on that day. And we will be all aware of how the heart is playing out, for good or for bad, on that day. And hopefully for good, for peace and happiness.
Right. I would couch it a little differently. I would say the six, with its two straight lines, can be a lot of assumptions and expectations, which of course could be judgments, but we want things a certain way, and we have these expectations and assumptions.
Exactly. And how
It may
often
not go that way.
how often does Christmas go the way we expect? A lot of families aren't as happy with each other as others, and that's where the Six of Hearts can be a difficult card for the day for them.
Well, and honestly, any card. This is what really important, like dear listener out there, if you're listening to this show right now, if you take away nothing else from today, take this away. All the cards are equally difficult.
In
They're
their
all
own way.
equally difficult, and they're all equally easy. It all depends on how you play them.
All right. Well, that's very profound and understandable. And I guess I focus on my own personal Christmas needs, etc. Coming from my own cards, of course.
Yeah.
Because I'm seeing it through the eyes of my own cards.
Yeah.
And so that's another thing to talk about, is how we see life
Yes.
through our own cards,
Yes.
that don't always understand why other people are seeing life differently.
Absolutely. And I can't ever interact any other way but through my Nine of Hearts, which is my primary pattern, and then my Seven of Clubs, which is my secondary pattern, or like the filter. And that Seven of Clubs being spiritual knowledge. So I'm always encountering life through my big open heart, or not. Maybe my heart's closed down in that moment. And if so, then my Seven of Clubs will be turned down, and then I might be critical and sharp in my words. And so this is how the cards play together. These primary patterns, they influence each other. So you can play out the best of both or the worst of both.
Right. And I have that because my four of clubs wants to get everything right. And then the Jack of Spades comes in and says, let's think again about this. And is a jack in the box and wants to try new things. So it's, it's, and there, and these cards all have their own shadows that bring out the underbelly in life for us to grow through. And so when we know that and we understand that, we can forgive ourselves and each other.
Well, that's right. And that's what I've seen often in couples readings that I've done, is that all of a sudden there's compassion between the two people because they see each other's shadows, foibles, eccentricities. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's why she does that, or that's why he acts that way. And just automatically, without even trying, there's a compassion that arises in that awareness.
Yeah, and there has to be an openness of both.
Yeah.
You have a reading and people want
Sure.
to hear
Well,
this.
that's right. There has to be an openness in the first place. Um, and that's what we're doing, Peter. And I really appreciate your intention and effort to bring this knowledge out. I believe that bringing this knowledge out will create a more enlightened society. That's what I hope for.
Well, I think it will, and it'll grow more and more once consciousness rises on our planet. I think it's happening. People will be happy to be clearer about themselves and each other.
Well, yes. And yes, I agree.
Yeah. So, so this is so important to grasp the nature of the lessons here, these, and it's an easy thing to. It's like I'm reminded of learning how to ski, and you can get out there and just do a little snowplow and slide along and feel good. You're learning. You're still on your feet, on your skis, but it gets more and more sophisticated. But you go step by step.
Mhm.
So it's a good start for people to learn their own cards. They can do that at your website, thesourcecards.com, put in their birth date, and automatically they become knowledgeable.
Yeah.
And
And knowledge is power.
yeah,
We're
knowledge is power.
no
Right.
longer fumbling around in the dark, bumping into obstacles, feeling stuck, feeling hopeless. Suddenly we have clarity, like, oh, this is the way to go. Oh, this is how to make my relationships better. This, like that. Suddenly the knowledge is there and the clarity is there.
Or this is why.
Yeah.
I think for me that means a lot more in like my own family
Mm.
and well, even for my students, um, to understand each other better, so we can be more open
Right.
to our differences.
I like that. And more allowing of each other, to give each other space. I know as a parent, that really helps me to give my children the space to play their cards, not the way I would do it or how I think it should be done. At my best, I can recognize, oh, they have a totally different way of doing it. Let me give them space to do it their own way.
Oh my gosh, my kids, my sons have such different cards than me, and but I love their cards for them, because I see them really owning themselves in purpose in life and relationships and all that kind of stuff, that I see them as playing out their cards that way. They don't necessarily, they're not as interested, because it's coming from their dad, and it's like, oh dad, you're so different. you know I'm I'm the jack of spades. I'm out of the box. And so for a lot of people who are trying to make life work, um, don't, don't think of me as a great role model, because not everybody is supposed to be out of the box as far out as I am.
Well, that's a great point to make. And I see this problem in the self-help industry in general, is this idea of do it like I do it. And the so-called self-help gurus, all of them explicitly will even say, well, here's how I did it. Now follow me and do it like I do it. And if you don't have their cards to play, you can't do it their way.
No.
And you will struggle and you will feel disappointed. You can't follow Eckhart Tolle's advice unless you're also born to play his cards. You can't do what Tony Robbins tells you to do unless you're also born to play his cards.
Right. Well, some of them are wise enough to know that people aren't them.
They are, and I haven't yet seen anyone say, "Don't follow me, do it your own way." Except someone named Jesus, or Nietzsche said that too. The really wisest ones among us have said that. Buddha said that. But I haven't seen it. Maybe they do say it, but I haven't really seen it.
But to me, it's about learning more about your own way. And
Yes.
that's why it's good to know your cards, to know your human design, to know your
Yes.
astrology. All that is to know yourself better, so then you don't have to, you can realize when you follow these people where they're not understanding your own cards.
Yes, and all of these tools give us permission to be who we really are. That's what we get. We get permission. And of all the tools, the one that's the easiest and simplest to learn on, and it's still the most profound, in my opinion, is the source cards.
Yeah, and we're just learning about that, because your work is not only just that you've read books and and have experience with the cards. You actually are receiving from higher consciousness profound new information all the time. It's amazing to me how your realizations make understanding the cards richer and richer.
Yeah, thank you. I've only recently become more conscious of that ability that I have. We were chatting about it the other day, that to me, things that are obvious, other people are like, whoa, that's profound. And I'm only realizing, oh, wait a minute, I have a gift where I can get information that's just like easy, but then it's actually really important information.
Yeah, no, you're the right guy for the job. And that's why I'm so happy to be able to talk with you about this, because this is such profound information and you're really a great key to it. And people should take advantage of it, by you do card readings, you actually teach, and you have your website, and you have a great book, that you have resources that are really wonderful, and people who are really on a path to know themselves better would be much better off getting to know you.
Well, thank you, Peter. That's very kind of you to say. I really appreciate your support.
Well, I'm totally supportive because it's helped me a great deal. And my family, at least me to know my family and to appreciate them even more. So I know, how that's why I love these interviews with you, because I know how important this is in the world for people to grasp this and use it for themselves and each other. And as you said earlier, it can make for a much happier world, because we're all more accepting of ourselves and each other by understanding how different we all are.
We have peace with each other, compassion for each other. We don't have an identity crisis, wondering who we are, why we're here. We know our life's purpose. We know our gifts, and we know the lessons we need to face. There's just a lot of mental noise and chatter that goes away when we simplify life this way.
Yeah, and so it's a great path to be on, and And it is, I don't know why I feel so like a different person, because I've learned to accept the cards I've been born to, and how I've played with how I've played with them, and they've played with me all my life.
Yeah.
And the challenges of being them, of being a four of clubs, and how I really expect to see to find truth and to stand for it. And even as some people say, get stuck in it. Well, too bad. If it's truth to me, I feel like I need to be stuck in it and willing to change as new truths show up.
Right. Well, that's a gift, actually, is there's a firmness. I mean, the four, that structure, that's a gift to create a structure. And like, no, actually, this is a structure.
Yeah, but it's not user friendly to others who would like to influence me in ways that to me aren't necessarily truthful.
Right. Right. It's people who want that structure.
Right. And so I'm happy to have it. It's just it's a responsibility, actually. And I guess all our cards are responsibilities. And that's, you know,
Yeah.
the good
Yeah.
thing is not to be in denial of our cards.
Right. We're always responsible to play our cards right or not, in which case we're also responsible for the negative outcomes of not playing our cards right.
Right. And we can't be somebody else and play their cards.
Nope.
Yeah. So this is great. Um, I don't know, when I wanted to do the show with you, I had some ideas, but this has been totally spontaneous and talking about things, I guess, that are really important to both of us.
It feels that way too. I actually have a really good feeling that this could be the start of a whole new series of talks.
Good. Let's go that way. So, so we're really out of time. Alexander Dunlop at thesourcecards.com, and the book Play Your Cards Right. Thanks again for just being who you are, and
Peter, thank you so much.
available as who you are.
Thank you. I really value you, Peter. You're a really wonderful asset on this planet, and you have so much knowledge to give. You mentioned your four of clubs, but you really do know so much, and you often surprise me with how much you know and how much wisdom.
I surprise a lot of people, that people
Yeah.
often have low expectations of me. And then they go, wow, he really knows something.
You really do. You
Thank
do.
you. Thank you so much. And this is Peter Roth, your host of Energy Stew at prn.live. I can be reached at peter@heartriver, HEART river.org. I'd love to hear from you, and thanks so much for listening.